Today we have a special guest, Hattie Boydle, world champion fitness model, and she's doing her glutes. Women love training their glutes, and what I've asked Hattie for is her 5 favorite exercises to get the most complete glutes possible. And what we're going to do is just go through the techniques that she uses for these exercises, and we're going to give you a free glute program. It's the same glute program that a world champion fitness model would follow to get world champion quality glutes. We are starting with the first exercise of the day is
high bar, pause, back squats.
So we've got 2 exercises. We've got a high bar or a low bar squat. Is there any reason why you've chosen high bar over a low bar?
Personally, I just prefer the feel of a high bar versus a low bar, and I like the depth that I can get in a high bar. So squatting is actually a fantastic exercise for glutes, as it loads the glutes in a lengthened position. So when it comes to building glutes, you're going to notice that the exercises that I choose today are going to target the muscle in a lengthened position, in a mid-range position, in a shortened position, and as well as in abduction and hip extension. So when it comes to choosing exercise for the glutes, you're going to get a really great result by picking one exercise that targets all of that and then applying effort to that over time.
So let's have a look at the squat, and there's a few little things that we're going to see about the squat, a few techniques that we like to teach to make sure that you're getting the absolute most for your glute development. First thing, so we're doing high bar. Just so you know, my 2 cents with this, high bar and low bar, both excellent for glute development. But the fact is, when we consider the other exercise that we're going to do today, it kind of makes a little bit more sense to choose the high bar variation. So let's have a look at the high bar. Let's go through step by step all the technique pointers. So this is your crash course to the perfect high bar squat. Hattie grabs the bar as close as her shoulder mobility allows. She holds the bar close so that she can increase that upper back tension. Upper trapezius, those are the muscles that she's resting that barbell on. She pulls her elbows back and shoulder blades down. Squeezing the elbows back recruits the mid-back muscles to maintain a rigid upper back, and then pulls the elbows down, which allows her to recruit her lats, which makes her entire spine neutral and rigid from start to finish. Now let's have a look. She unracks this weight. The best stance is unique to the individual. Hattie has a relatively mid-range stance, just outside of hip width, toes pointed very slightly outwards. Now watch what she does. She's looking straight ahead. We're going to pause in the bottom position, spend more time in that pause position where the muscle is at its longest stretch. Let's have a go. Control down as deep as her mobility allows. Look at that, neutral pelvis and up. Neutral pelvis and therefore neutral spine. So she could go deeper, but she'd probably get a thing called butt wink, which takes the tension off the glutes. So is butt wink good or bad? Well, I say it's something that we should be avoiding, but not because of the back injury part of it. I'm not going to go there. All I'm talking about is if we want to maintain tension, we want to keep the glutes at the greatest stretch, don't go into butt wink. We're now relieving the stretch if you do go into butt wink, so don't do that. Control tempo. Pause, maximizing that time under tension in that lengthened position. There's a lot of great research that tells us lengthened portion of the movement is the most effective when it comes to building muscle. But it doesn't mean that shortened range of motion movements are bad. It just means that lengthen is very good. So that's where we're doing the pause in the most effective part of the movement. Good set. High five. Yeah. Let's have a look from front view. Grabbing the barbell close to shoulder mobility allows. This is as close as my shoulder mobility allows because I've got very poor shoulder mobility. But Hattie's shoulder mobility is great, just like majority of the people in the world. Standing in her comfortable stance, just outside of hip width. Something I love to do is look straight ahead. The body follows the eyes. So when she looks straight ahead, balance is a huge component for a successful squat. Let's go. Takes a big breath to brace, controls down as deep as her mobility allows. Watch her brace. Imagine this is how I want you to think about it. Imagine I'm going to punch you in the belly. You've got to brace that way. So she draws her rib cage downwards towards her pelvis. She doesn't just arch her back. It's a really nice, strong foundation where she's using the muscles on her front and the muscles on her back. Pausing in that deep position. Toes in line with knees, in line with hips. Everything's aligned. There's no knee valgus. The knees aren't knocking in or pushing out excessively. It's all aligned. That's the strongest and safest position. Holding her breath. Exhales once she gets to the top. Really nice squatting. Good job, Hattie Boydle.
So good.
So, 2 sets of 8. A lot of people would typically write on a program 3 sets or 4 sets, whatever that might be. That's fantastic. What we're thinking today is more exercises, but less sets on each. So because we're doing 5 different exercises today, we're choosing to do 2 sets on each, 2 top sets. The warm-up sets don't count. That equals 10 total sets for the glutes in 1 session. Really nice sweet spot. Perfect, Hattie Boydle. Nice work. Nice work. Good one.
Fuck.
Good one.
Yeah. That's just a warm up. My bum's stronger than that.
Next exercise, the perfect complement for the squat, which targets the glutes in the lengthened position. Now we go to the glute drive, which targets the glutes in the shortened position. Did you notice how we paused in the fully lengthened position? Now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to pause in the fully shortened position, which is where this exercise places the most emphasis. So how many reps are you going to be doing?
15.
15 reps. What are the technical cues you're going to be thinking about when you do this?
Personally, these days I go for more of a narrow stance. Now, stance position is totally up to the individual, what feels the most comfortable. I've only got narrow hips, so a really wide position doesn't favour me in terms of how well I feel my glutes, particularly at the top, and as well as how I feel my glutes or my lower back, should I say, at the beginning, at the bottom. So range is something that I think people should explore, because if we come down too low and we get that butt wink that Bass was talking about in the squat, and we get it here, you might cause a little bit of pain, discomfort in the lower back. So we actually want to keep the spine neutral, the pelvis neutral, and focus on the glutes driving the hips up. So we shouldn't see a change in the spine when performing this exercise. So position, I like to have mine in quite a comfortable position. It's about hip width, narrow, boy hips. And then I place the pad on top of my hip bone. That's really comfortable. Take a deep breath in, drive up, and then I keep my eyes to follow my hips throughout the whole rep and set. I'm gonna go 2 more.
Nice.
Am I on? Oh.
Nice.
Woo.
Okay, so here's a nice tip for you guys. Notice that she took that movement to failure. That's probably the best thing that you can do when you're thinking about isolation exercises, things that come at a very low cost of fatigue. She didn't go anywhere near failure for the squat, which is a very complex movement. And if she was to take that movement to failure, there'd be a lot of technical breakdown. There's not really much technical breakdown that can happen here. So taking this movement to failure isn't going to really cause injury. It's not going to have a negative impact on the remainder of the session. She'll take a little time to recover, and she'll probably be able to do the same amount of reps on the next set.
Goal would be to be within 2 rep ranges of that. So if I was to try and get 2 more reps out at that weight, I don't know if I'll be maximizing the top position. So therefore, I'm getting mechanical to failure. So, and technical failure, where I'm no longer able to achieve the same amount of range with the same efficiency of those previous reps, which is when it comes to hypertrophy, that's kind of where you want to be working in for exercises that are safe enough to load in that way. Like you said, in the squat, I stay away from failing on a squat. Doesn't mean I'm not working hard, but I'm working hard safely. So this is a great exercise to really go to town on. Also, it burns like hell, so it's a nice sensation in the glutes.
Good one. A few more minutes. How many minutes rest between these sets?
2 minutes.
2 minutes rest between sets, and you'll see how many reps you'll be able to do on the next set. With the squats, whenever it's more complex, more technique involved, more compound, a little bit longer rest. So we did about 3 to 4 minutes rest between her squat sets. Also, you probably notice that she's not going heavy. She's really reintroducing the squats into her programming again. She hasn't done squats in a while. She's usually a lot stronger with her squats, but because it's new, we're starting light. So more rest between sets for more complex movements, but then as the exercises get a little bit easier, take them to failure, less rest between sets, and it's a lot easier to push hard. Now, here's the next question. What's better for glute development? Hip thrust or a squat? That's a trick question. They're both as good. And actually what's better is including them both, which is what we're doing here.
Yeah, I think a mistake people make is, what's the best exercise? It's like, that's a very limiting question. It's like, it's going to be so super individual. If you ask any, fitness industry influencer or girl who has big glutes what their favorite exercises are, rarely ever will they have the exact same response, because we have our different bar mechanics. What feels good for someone else doesn't feel so good for others. So it's important to have a toolbox full of exercises and exercise progressions. So if you can't squat on a bar, do some sort of squat pattern. You can do a leg press, you can do a hack squat, you can do a single leg squat, a split squat, something where you're going to take that glute in the length position is going to be a great variation to perform if that's not the exercise of choice for you. Totally fine. I think a really cool way of thinking of things is like movement patterns. Like we have deadlift patterns. I'm going to show you a Romanian deadlift. You might prefer it doing it with dumbbells. You might prefer a trap bar. You might prefer single leg. It's a deadlift variation. It's going to take the glute through the mid-range position. It's going to do its thing if taken to proximity to failure or within a heavy load that's going to stimulate the muscle. Oh,
How many was that?
15.
Okay.
Woo.
2 less reps than the set before. That's good. It's still within the range. And she took both of those sets to failure. Next exercise.
Romanian deadlift.
Romanian deadlift. Let's go. What weight next? 80?
Yeah, I'll just go 80.
Now here's the thing with the Romanian deadlift. It's pretty much the same as a conventional deadlift, minus the leg drive. What's leg drive? Quadriceps. How do we get quadriceps? By bending the knees. So how do we avoid using quadriceps? Don't bend the knees. That's what an RDL is. So the difference between an RDL and a conventional deadlift is RDL is more hamstrings, conventional deadlift is more quadriceps. So what we're going to have a look at now is the Romanian deadlift, the way that Hattie likes to perform it. How many reps are you going to be doing?
12.
Now, this is a bit strange because we've just gone 8 reps for the squat, 15 to 17 reps for the glute drive, and 12 reps for the RDL. I want you guys to understand something. A lot of the times I used to think, I'd look at a program, it's like, what's the rep range? It's 10, so everything has to be 10s. The fact is, 10 reps on a squat is different to 10 reps on a Romanian deadlift, is different to 10 reps on every single exercise, feels slightly different with a slightly different rep range. Hattie Boydle has been doing this for decades, and she knows what's the most comfortable for her. So she's working within a hypertrophy rep range, which is quite broad actually. So
yes.
You can achieve hypertrophy, or hypertrophy just means building muscle. You can achieve that through so many different rep ranges. And she's choosing the rep ranges that are most comfortable for the specific exercise. So I didn't tell her what reps, I asked her because she knows what's most comfortable. 12. Let's have a look at what you're doing for the Romanian deadlift.
So a cue I really like to focus on, particularly at the top of a lift, or particularly at the top of a Romanian deadlift, is hips to the bar. So when you're coming up, most people will kind of think about standing up, which is fine, but you're going to then lean your torso and your body weight back. What I want to think about is weight in the midfoot. So as I come over, that's really placing a lot of tension and emphasis on the glutes and the hamstrings. And as I come up, I think bringing my hips to the bar, so I'm achieving hip extension at the top in the same way that I do hip extension in that horizontal plane for the glute drive.
Let's check it out.
So the first lift from the bottom is going to be a conventional deadlift. So we're going to use leg drive to actually pick the weight up. I like to have my toes facing forward. First rep is a conventional deadlift, deep breath in.
Very important to maintain a neutral spine from this deadlift variation. The moment she rounds her back, she's using different muscles. So you want a rigid torso, maintaining tension on the hamstrings and glutes throughout the entire movement. She's using her lats to keep the bar close to her body, or as she said, in line with her midfoot. Something that I love to do with the Romanian deadlift, the body follows the eyes. So looking down is a really nice cue for a Romanian deadlift. Teaches you to push your butt back to create the most stretch on those muscles. So sometimes you might see with the conventional deadlift is people are looking up because they want their torso to be a little bit more upright. I don't mean completely up, so don't take that out of context, but a little bit more upwards compared to what we're seeing here. But for a Romanian deadlift, we are focusing a lot on the down portion of the movement. So therefore, it's a cue that we love to use is to look down. When people look up, they kind of bend more at the knee. So when they look down, they tend to use more of a hip hinge. So excellent technique. One more set?
Yep.
Good one. Very good. Nice. Good job.
Oh, my lats get such a
Good one.
workout.
So a few things. Lifting straps for a Romanian deadlift, definite must have. Otherwise your grip is going to be the limiting factor. We're not here to train grip, we're here to train glutes, but hamstrings, there's a lot of moving parts here. The next thing, did she go to absolute fail? She went to mechanical fail or technical fail, which she mentioned before, which is where she could have done a few more reps for sure, but the technique would have started to maybe change a little bit, which she absolutely doesn't want to do. So when people think, does technique matter?
Yes.
Yeah, it absolutely does, especially when your goal is to, whether it's to lift the heaviest weight possible or build as much muscle possible. When your goal is to build muscle, you want to position your body in a very specific way to really, really target that muscle. And the places where her technique could have broken down in a deadlift is typically the back could have gone to more rounding.
Yeah.
And if that happens, it takes the weight off the glutes, which is the target area, and more onto the back. No point doing that.
Yeah, something I just named as soon as I finished that lift was, oh, my lats. So my lats have to work super hard, one, as a bracer of the core, but also to pull that bar into my body. So as I'm down here, 80 kilos for my lats is pretty fucking heavy. 80 kilos for my legs, it's relatively heavy, but not like it is for the upper body. So the limiting factor is always going to be the weakest link, which for me is going to be my upper body. And what's really interesting that you just said there, Bass, when you talked about technical failure, I think an important piece as we come to learn about training, it's more than just an exercise, it's a skill. And so when we are practicing exercises, we only load it when it's safe enough to do so when we've performed the technique correctly. So you've always taught me technique before load, and that's how we build confidence. So when people say, oh, I'm too scared to put that weight on the bar, that comes down to a confidence thing, knowing that maybe it might not be ready for you. I know that when you used to throw out numbers for me in my lifts, I'd be like, shit, but I knew I could get there because I'd practiced the technique so much that I had the confidence that if I followed everything exactly as I was doing, I was gonna make it up, knowing that it was gonna be really fucking hard. The difference between muscle hypertrophy or training for hypertrophy and training for strength is one wants to find the path of least resistance, the other one wants to find the path of the hardest resistance. When it comes to building muscle, you want the resistance. If you make it easier, you're not going to load the muscle in the position that you want to be able to create the same amount of force or tension on. But when it comes to performing a really heavy squat, you want bar path. You're trying to find the path of least resistance. You're trying to say, over the hips, chest up. You know, like you're trying to find that center of gravity. When it comes to training the biceps, you don't want to do this. Like that's the center of gravity. You don't want to do that. You want to bring it out here so that strength curve creates a lot of tension on the bicep or on the shoulder this way. So something to think about when it comes to strength and hypertrophy. While load is really important, technique comes first, and one wants to find the path of most resistance, the other one wants to find the path of least resistance.
Technique matters, kids. What are we doing now? We're going to do a one-legged leg press. Why do you want to do that, Hattie Boydle?
Every program I like to do at least one unilateral exercise, because unilateral exercises are going to challenge the stabilizers of the hip, which are important for glute development. So if I wasn't to do a double leg Romanian, I put in a single leg Romanian. Now, people might say, well, it doesn't lift as much load. The muscle just needs to know stress. So as long as you are lifting the right amount of load for that single leg press, that single leg squat, that single leg RDL, you are going to hypertrophy the muscle. One of the reasons I want to choose a single leg press, I get a really nice amount of range with the single leg, and I'm going to take it into more like a high bar position. So it's not going to be so knee dominant or knee flexion. I'm going to take the muscle into a lengthened position, but my glute med is also going to have to help stabilize the hip in that position. So I'm going to go higher reps for this, 15 reps, 15 to 20. I like to work within rep ranges actually for hypertrophy because it means that like on days that you can really push, you go for those higher rep ranges. I think a lot of people, they get stuck on a rep range and they're like, okay, 12, it's 12. It's like, no, that's a guide to the weight that you're going to use. So as an example, my first exercise, the second exercise that I did, which was the glute hip thrust, we said 15 reps. I was like, I can do a little bit more than that. So rather than getting stuck on 15, I'm going to go to actually, I'm working with that 1 to 2 rep shy of failure, knowing that that proximity is going to get the job done without over annihilating my glutes because I have more exercises to come.
Good one. Something important to notice here is when Hattie said, people think that a unilateral movement, you can't load it as much. The fact is she's just loaded the hell out of it. So she's already done her squats, she's already done her deadlifts, she's already done her glute drive, hip thrust, whatever you want to call that, where she's able to really, really load it. So it's not always about hitting the muscle in the exact same angle. We've already hit those muscles with really good amount of stimulus on those angles. Now it's about adding something different. Something that Brett Contreras taught me once, which I really, really liked. A lot of people focus on, for their glutes, working in the vertical plane. So that's like your squats and your deadlifts and your lunge variations. That's fantastic. And typically that's how I would do it. And he said that's equivalent to saying compound pushing and pulling exercises like your bench press and your pull-ups is enough for arms. Well, it is enough for arms, but not at the highest level. So the best arms in the world from bodybuilders, they do all angles, different isolation exercises. And this is how we're treating the glutes. So Hattie's not just after really nice glutes, she's after world-class glutes. And those are the little pieces of detail that she likes to include. So next up, unilateral variation. Important to note that the leg press single-legged is not better than a single-legged lunge or a single-legged RDL. It's just one of the many variations that we're using, and that's what we're using today.
Oh, that's a really nice leg press. Ooh.
Okay, how's that weight? Good?
I'm gonna go a tiny bit heavier.
Okay, set 2, 15 reps, one leg at a time. Have a look at the foot placement. This is unique to Hattie. So she's not a big girl. I think she's about 5'2", 5'3". No. And her proportions are going to be different to someone who's a little bit bigger. So her foot placement is, if you're to do bilateral, so both legs at the same time, it would be considered a narrow stance actually. And the focus is purely hip extension. So quite low foot placement, quite a close foot placement. Driving through the entire foot. The main joint that she's working on is the hip joint. She has to maintain that neutral spine, so the back can't lift off the pad. How many reps was that?
15.
15 reps.
Oh. Ooh, that felt good.
Finishing the day with cable glute med kickbacks. This is the easiest exercise of the day, which is why we place it last, because all of her energy is gone. And what are we focusing on here, Hattie Boydle?
So when I perform these exercises, it's not just about the moving leg, it's also about the standing leg. So whenever we're standing on one leg like this, we're going to be challenging all the little muscles around the pelvis. So the glute min, the glute max, and the glute med, right? So actually everything is going to come into play just to stand on one leg, as well as challenge the lateral core to keep the pelvis stable. So when I perform this particular exercise, I want to make sure that's locked in, so this doesn't move at all. A softened knee, now my whole glute is working to stabilize this side, and then I can perform or focus on driving this leg back into a 30-degree angle so that we're challenging the muscle fibers for the glute med. So what we see as a mistake is these ones. It's not about how high you can kick your leg. It is about the muscle moving the momentum, moving the foot and keeping tension on that particular muscle. So we come into a lengthened or a stretched position here. If I had something else to hold on to. Right, lengthened, shortened. Lengthened, under load, shortened, under load. Keeping this nice and stable, so abs are on, core is on, muscles on my standing leg, or the glute on my standing leg on, as well as the leg abducting.
How many reps?
15 to 20.
Let's do it.
Really controlled. So there's no swinging. I'm really making sure that the movement is done by the muscle. So I'm pausing at the stretch position, pausing at the shorter position, controlling the movement in the concentric and the eccentric. and both my glutes are burning.
Good one. Swap sides. 2 sets, 15 reps.
I actually do like a 30-second rest when I perform these because, as I named, the standing leg is actually burning, and so it's going to be pre-fatigued before I go and do the movement. So for this particular exercise, more than my leg press, I actually give myself a 30-second rest.
Good one.
Good one.
A few more minutes later.
When you get this right, it's so good. So sometimes playing around with, depending on what kind of cable you have. If you had like an arm that came out there, it's actually a lot easier to perform the movement. Ideally, I like to try and stay a little bit more upright, but I also need to hang on to something. Oh, fuck.
And there you have it. There's 5 of Hattie's favourite exercises. It's not the only exercises she does, but they complement one another. A lot of the times people think, what's a good glute exercise? And they just do their favourite glute exercises. As you can see, there's a strategy to what Hattie's doing. She'll get one exercise, target one part of the glutes, and then every one of those exercises hits a very different part of those glutes. So we have 3 glute muscles, the biggest one being the glute max. That's what we really focused on. But then she also focused on, with these last exercises, the unilateral and those cable exercises, and abducting the leg, moving our leg sideways, hits those glute min and glute med as well. So that is a complete glute day from Hattie Boydle. Where do we find you?
You can find me on my YouTube, Hattie Boydle or Flex Method. You can find me on Instagram, Hattie Boydle or Flex Method. They're probably the 2.
Thank you for coming, and we're going to put the program in the comment section below. So click like, subscribe, all that stuff, and I'll see you next time.